I was 24 when I first moved into my apartment alone. It wasn't anything special, just a small one-bedroom on the second floor of an older building in Arizona, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had my own space, my own routine, my own silence. And for the first few weeks, that silence felt peaceful, safe even. The kind of quiet that lets you fall asleep without thinking twice. That changed one night around 1:03 a.m. I remember the time clearly because I checked my phone the moment I woke up. I wasn't sure what had woken me at first, just that something felt off. Not a loud noise, not a crash, just a subtle disturbance in the air like the apartment had shifted slightly out of place. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Then I heard it, a soft click, not from my room, from the front door. My heart immediately started racing. I lived alone. No roommates, no pets. No one else should have been there. I held my breath, straining to listen. Nothing followed. No footsteps, no movement. Just silence again. Too much silence. I told myself it had to be the building, settling maybe pipes or pressure changes. Old buildings make weird sounds. Everyone says that. But something about that click didn't feel random. It felt intentional. I didn't get up to check. I stayed in bed, frozen, staring into the dark, until I eventually fell back asleep without even realizing it. The next morning, everything looked normal. The door was closed, locked, chain still in place, nothing missing, nothing moved. I almost laughed at myself while getting ready for work. "You're being paranoid," I muttered. "It's just a new place." That's what I kept telling myself. Until the next night. I stayed up later than usual, watching something on my laptop in bed. Around 2 a.m., I started to feel that same unease creeping in, the kind that doesn't come from anything specific, just a quiet sense that something isn't right. I tried to ignore it, but at exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard it again. The same sound, a click, clearer this time, sharper, followed by something else, a faint creak, like wood shifting under pressure. My chest tightened instantly. That wasn't pipes, that wasn't random, that was my front door. I slowly sat up, my eyes locked on my bedroom doorway. The hall beyond it was dark, but I could just barely see the faint outline of the front door at the end. And that's when I noticed it. The door wasn't fully closed anymore. It was slightly open, just a few inches, but enough that the hallway looked different. Wider, wrong. I couldn't move. My entire body locked in place as my brain tried to process what I was seeing. I knew for a fact I had locked that door. I always did, every night. It was a habit, a routine, something I never forgot, and yet now it stood there, cracked open in the middle of the night. I grabbed my phone slowly, trying not to make any noise. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped it. I debated calling 911 right then, but something stopped me. What would I even say? My door opened by itself. They'd think I was overreacting. I forced myself to listen. Still no footsteps, no breathing, nothing. Just that open door, watching me from the end of the hallway. After what felt like forever, I finally got out of bed. Each step I took felt louder than it should have. The floor creaked under me as I moved slowly toward the door, my breath shallow, my ears ringing from how hard my heart was pounding. When I reached the hallway, I paused. The door was definitely open. Not wide, just enough that I could see the dark space beyond it. I reached out and pushed it slowly. It didn't resist. It swung open easily, revealing the empty stairwell outside. No one there. No movement, no sound, just cold air drifting in. I stepped forward and looked down the stairs. Nothing. I closed the door immediately, locked it, checked the chain twice, then 3 times. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, I checked everything again. Nothing missing, nothing broken, no signs of forced entry. I even checked the lock mechanism. It worked perfectly. That's when I started to question myself. Maybe I forgot to lock it. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my memory wasn't as reliable as I thought. That explanation almost worked. Almost. Until the 3rd night. I didn't go to bed early this time. I stayed up on purpose, sitting on my couch with all the lights off, staring directly at the front door, waiting, watching. My phone sat in my hand, ready. My eyes burned from not blinking. The clock ticked slowly toward 2:13 a.m., and when it hit, it happened. Right in front of me. The lock turned, slowly, deliberately. I heard the mechanism shift. I saw the handle move slightly. and then the door opened. Not fast, not violently, just gently, like someone on the other side was trying not to make a sound. My entire body went numb. I couldn't even breathe. The door opened just a few inches, then stopped. No one stepped inside. No shadow crossed the floor. Nothing. It just stayed there, open, waiting, like it was inviting something in, or letting something out. I don't know how long I sat there staring at it. Seconds, minutes. It felt like hours. But eventually the door moved again. Slowly. It closed, and I heard the lock click back into place. From the inside. I didn't move until morning. I didn't blink. I didn't sleep. And the worst part wasn't that the door opened by itself. It was the realization that hit me sometime around sunrise. That door didn't open randomly. It opened at the exact same time every night, 2:13 a.m. Like something was coming in and leaving. On a schedule. I didn't stay in that apartment alone the next night. I couldn't. I told my friend Melissa everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the part where the door locked itself again from the inside because saying it out loud made it feel unreal in a way that scared me more than the actual event. She didn't believe me at first, not fully, but she agreed to stay over anyway. If it happens again, she said, we'll see it together. I remember clinging to that sentence like it meant safety, like having another person there would somehow stop whatever was happening. That night, we sat in the living room with all the lights off again, both of us staring at the front door like it might move at any second. Melissa tried to joke about it at first, but I could tell she was nervous. The silence in that apartment felt heavier than before, like it was aware of us watching. The clock crept toward 2:13 a.m., 2:10, 2:11, 2:12, and then it happened. The lock turned, loud, clear, undeniable. Melissa grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. Did you just... She started, but the words died in her throat as the handle slowly twisted downward. The door opened. Just like before, a few inches. Then it stopped. We both stared at it, frozen. Is someone there? Melissa whispered. No answer. No movement. No shadow. Just the open space beyond the door. Melissa stood up suddenly. I'm checking, she said, trying to sound braver than she was. Don't I? Whispered. But she was already walking toward it. Every step echoed too loudly in the silence. She reached the door and pulled it open the rest of the way. The hallway outside was empty, completely empty. She stepped out, looked down the stairs, even called out once. Nothing. She came back in slowly, her face pale. There's no one out there, she said. The moment she shut the door, we both heard it. A soft sound behind us. Not from the door, from inside the apartment. A shift, a faint movement, like something adjusting its weight. Melissa turned first. I followed her gaze. The hallway leading to my bedroom was dark, but something felt different about it. Wrong. Was your bedroom door open like that? She whispered. My stomach dropped. I always closed it. Always. But now it stood slightly ajar, just like the front door had been. Stay here, Melissa said, but her voice shook. We both knew neither of us was staying anywhere. We moved together down the hallway, slow and silent. The air felt colder with each step. My heartbeat was so loud, I was sure whatever was inside could hear it. Melissa reached the door first and pushed it open. The room was empty, or at least it looked empty. Nothing out of place, nothing obvious, but something felt off. The air in the room felt used, like someone had just been there moments before. Melissa walked in further, scanning the corners. There's no one here, she said, but she didn't sound convinced. That's when I noticed it. The closet door. It was open, just slightly. I never left it open, ever. Melissa saw it too. You didn't. No, I said immediately. We both stared at the gap for a few seconds. That felt like minutes. Then Melissa stepped forward and yanked it open. Empty. Clothes hanging exactly as I left them. No one hiding inside. But as she stepped back, something else caught my eye. My bed. The blanket was slightly pulled back. Not enough to be obvious, but enough that I knew. Someone had been sitting there. The indentation was still faintly visible. Melissa followed my gaze and went completely still. We need to call the police, she said quietly. I nodded, already reaching for my phone. While I spoke to the dispatcher, Melissa kept scanning the room. Then she suddenly froze her eyes, locking onto something behind me. Don't move, she whispered. My entire body went cold. "What?" I asked, barely breathing. She didn't answer right away. Then, very slowly, she pointed upward. I turned my head. The attic hatch above the hallway. It was open, just a few inches, enough for darkness to spill out from inside. My legs nearly gave out. We hadn't heard it open. We hadn't seen it move. But now it was open, and something was inside. Something that had been there the entire time. The dispatcher was still talking, asking questions, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could focus on was that opening above us, and the feeling stronger than anything I've ever felt, that something was looking down at us, watching, waiting. Then we heard it, a soft shift, wood creaking above us, slow movement, crawling. Melissa grabbed my arm. "We need to get out, now." We didn't wait. We ran, out of the apartment, down the stairs, into the parking lot. I don't remember locking the door. I don't remember closing it. I just remember the cold air hitting my face as we got outside. The police arrived minutes later. They searched the entire apartment, the attic, every corner, and they found him. A man, thin, dirty, barefoot, hiding in the insulation above my ceiling. He had been living there, watching, listening, waiting. They found food wrappers, empty bottles, even pieces of clothing that weren't mine. He had been there for days, maybe longer. The officer who spoke to me afterwards said something I'll never forget. He wasn't breaking in, he said quietly. He already had access. I didn't ask how. I didn't want to know. I moved out the next day. I never went back, but sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I still check the time. And every once in a while, it's 2:13 a.m. And for a split second before I fully wake up, I swear I can hear it. The sound of a lock turning. I was 19 when this happened, and it was the first time my parents trusted me to stay home alone overnight. They were visiting relatives out of state, and I insisted I'd be fine. I had lived in that house my whole life. It was in a quiet neighborhood in Texas where nothing ever really happened. No break-ins, no weird incidents, nothing that would make you think twice about being alone. That's probably why I didn't take it seriously when I heard the first sound. It was around 10:30 p.m. I was sitting on the couch in the living room with my laptop half watching, a show half scrolling on my phone. The house was completely quiet except for the TV and the occasional sound of wind pushing against the windows. Then I heard it, a soft tapping sound. At first I didn't even look up. I assumed it was a branch hitting the window, even though I knew there weren't any trees close enough for that. The tapping stopped for a few seconds. Then it started again. Slower this time. More deliberate, like someone was doing it on purpose. I muted the TV. The room fell silent instantly, and the tapping became clearer. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps again. My stomach tightened a little, but I still tried to be rational. It had to be something outside. Wind, debris, anything but what my brain was starting to suggest. I stood up slowly and walked toward the window. The curtains were closed, and the reflection of the TV flickered faintly across the glass. I hesitated for a second before pulling the curtain back just a few inches. And that's when I saw him. A man standing right outside the window. His face was inches from the glass. His eyes were already locked on mine the moment I moved the curtain, like he had been waiting for me to look. I stumbled backwards so fast I nearly tripped over the coffee table. My chest felt like it collapsed in on itself. He didn't move, didn't react. He just stayed there, staring into the house. The porch light wasn't bright enough to show everything, but I could see enough. He was tall, broad shoulders, wearing something dark. His face looked wrong. Not deformed, not injured, just empty. Expressionless in a way that didn't feel human. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. "There's someone outside my house," I whispered. "He's looking through my window." The dispatcher asked me to stay calm, to stay inside, to not approach the window again. She said officers were on the way. While I was on the phone, I couldn't help myself. I looked back at the window. He was still there. Same position, same stare, like he hadn't moved at all. Then, slowly, he lifted one hand and pressed it flat against the glass. Not knocking, not tapping, just pressing it there, showing me he was real, showing me he could reach me. I felt my throat close up. I couldn't speak. The dispatcher kept asking questions, but all I could do was stare. After a few seconds, he stepped backward into the darkness, not turning around, not breaking eye contact, just stepping back until the light no longer touched his face, and then he was gone. The police arrived about 5 minutes later. They checked the yard, the street, the sides of the house. Nothing. No one. Probably a prank, one officer said, though his tone didn't match the words. They looked at the window and found the handprint. Clear, large, fresh. One of them took a photo of it. Call us again. If anything else happens, they told me. Keep your doors locked. I nodded, but I could tell from the way they moved, the way they kept scanning the yard, that they didn't think it was just a prank either. After they left, the house felt completely different. Not safe anymore. Not familiar. Every shadow felt deeper. Every quiet moment felt like something was waiting to break it. I turned on every light in the house. I checked every door, every window twice. I even checked the closets, the bathroom, under the bed places I knew didn't make sense to check, but I did it anyway. I stayed awake, sitting on the couch with my phone in my hand, listening, waiting. Around 1:20 a.m., I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe he had just been some random guy passing through. Maybe I'd never see him again. That's when I heard it. A dragging sound. Not footsteps. Something slower, heavier, like someone was pulling their feet instead of lifting them. It came from the side of the house, moving along the wall. My entire body went rigid. The sound stopped right outside the same window. Then, 3 taps. Softer than before. Almost gentle. I didn't move this time. I didn't go near the window. I just sat there, staring straight ahead, trying to breathe quietly. The tapping stopped again. Silence filled the room. And then from somewhere closer, much closer, I heard something that made my stomach drop instantly. The sliding glass door in the kitchen. The handle moved, slowly, carefully, like someone was trying not to make a sound. I turned my head just enough to see the edge of the kitchen from where I sat. The curtain covering the glass door shifted slightly, and behind it, I saw the outline of someone standing there, still, waiting, watching, like he had found another way in. I don't think I've ever felt fear like that before or since. It wasn't panic. It wasn't shock. It was something colder, slower, like my body already knew I was in danger before my mind could catch up. I stayed completely still on the couch, barely breathing, staring at the faint outline behind the kitchen curtain. He didn't move. Not at first. The shape just stood there, motionless, like it was listening, like it knew exactly where I was and was waiting for me to make the first move. My phone was still in my hand, and I forced myself to unlock it as quietly as I could. I redialed 911, my fingers trembling so badly I had to try twice. When the dispatcher picked up, I whispered, "He's back. He's at my back door." She immediately told me to stay hidden, to not make any sudden movements, that officers were already being dispatched. I didn't take my eyes off the curtain. The outline shifted slightly. Not a step, not a walk, just a subtle change in posture, like he leaned closer to the glass. The curtain moved a fraction, brushing against his shape. I could feel him looking in, even though I couldn't see his face anymore. The dispatcher asked if he was trying to get inside. I didn't answer right away, because at that exact moment, the handle on the sliding door moved. Slowly, deliberately. The metal made a faint clicking sound as it was tested once, then again. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was checking the lock. I pressed myself back into the couch, trying to make myself smaller, quieter, invisible. The handle stopped moving for a few seconds, and then something worse happened. The curtain lifted slightly from the bottom, just enough that I could see his hand. Pale, dirty, fingers long and tense as they gripped the edge of the door. He pulled once, harder this time. The door didn't open. I had locked it earlier. Thank God I had locked it. The dispatcher's voice was steady in my ear, telling me to stay where I was, telling me help was coming, but everything else faded into the background. All I could focus on was that hand, and the fact that it wasn't leaving. He pulled again, then stopped. Then, something scraped lightly against the glass. Not the handle, not the frame. His nails, dragging slowly downward, making a faint, almost deliberate sound. I felt my stomach twist violently. He was taking his time. He wasn't in a rush. He knew I was alone. He knew no one else was there to stop him. Then the hand disappeared. The curtain fell back into place. The shape behind it shifted again, moving slightly to the side. For a moment, I thought he had given up, that he was leaving. I almost let myself believe it. And then I heard it. The faintest sound from the other side of the house. The front door. A soft metallic click. My entire body went numb. The dispatcher asked what was happening, but I couldn't answer. Because I knew that sound. I had checked that door twice. I had locked it. But I also knew what I heard earlier that night. The window, the tapping, the way he moved. He hadn't left. He had just moved. He's inside, I whispered. The words barely came out. I heard footsteps then. Not loud, not rushed. Slow, careful. Moving through the hallway. Each step measured, controlled, like he was trying not to make a sound, but didn't really care if I heard him anyway. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line, to stay hidden, that officers were almost there. But I could hear him getting closer. One step, then another. The floor creaked softly under his weight. He stopped just outside the living room. I couldn't see him yet, but I knew exactly where he was. Just beyond the wall, just out of sight, waiting. My breathing became shallow, uneven. I tried to control it, but I couldn't. My chest felt tight, like it was closing in on itself. And then, he spoke. His voice was low, calm, almost curious. "I saw you looking at me." My heart stopped. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The silence stretched for a few seconds. Then I heard him take another step. And another. He was in the living room now. I could feel it, the presence, the weight of someone else in the same space. I stared straight ahead, too afraid to turn my head, too afraid to see him again. "You shouldn't have looked," he said softly. The words made my stomach drop. He took another step closer. I could hear his breathing now. Slow, controlled, close. And then sirens, loud, sudden, right outside the house. The sound cut through everything like a knife. The footsteps stopped instantly. The room went silent again, completely silent. I heard movement, then fast this time. Not dragging, not slow, running. Toward the back of the house, toward the sliding door. By the time I forced myself to turn, he was gone. The curtain swayed slightly from where he had pushed past it. The door was still locked. The police burst through the front door, seconds later clearing the house room by room. They found nothing. No one. No sign of forced entry. No broken locks. No footprints. Nothing that proved he had ever been inside. But I knew he had. I felt it. I heard it. The officers checked the yard again, the street, even the neighboring houses. Still nothing. One of them finally turned to me and said something that stayed with me long after that night. If he got in without forcing anything, he said that means he's been here before. I moved out 2 days later. I didn't tell anyone where I was going except my parents. I changed my number. I tried to forget, but every once in a while when I'm alone at night, I still hear it in my head. That soft tapping, 3 times, followed by that voice, calm, patient, like it's only a matter of time before he finds me again. "I saw you looking at me." I was 26 when I moved into my first apartment, completely on my own. It was a small studio on the 3rd floor of an older building in Chicago. Nothing fancy, but it was in a good area, and the rent was manageable. I liked the independence, the quiet, the feeling that everything in that space belonged to me. For the first month, everything was normal, predictable. I had a routine work dinner, Netflix, sleep, the kind of life that doesn't leave room for anything unusual. That's why the first voice didn't even register as something serious. It was late, maybe around midnight. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom when I thought I heard the TV from the other room. Just a faint murmur, like someone talking in the background. I paused and listened. It stopped. I shrugged it off. Probably just noise from another apartment. Old buildings carry sound in weird ways. I went to bed without thinking much about it. The next night, it happened again. Same time. Same kind of sound. Low, indistinct, like someone speaking just out of range. This time I was in bed already, scrolling on my phone. I muted everything and listened more carefully. The sound was definitely coming from inside my apartment. Not through the walls, not from outside. Inside. I sat up slowly, my heart starting to pick up. "Hello," I called out, half expecting to feel stupid immediately after. No response, just silence. I got out of bed and checked the main room. The TV was off. The windows were closed. The front door was locked. Nothing looked out of place. I told myself it was my imagination. Stress, fatigue. That's what everyone says when something doesn't make sense. For a few days, nothing happened. I almost forgot about it. And then one night, everything changed. I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when I heard it again. This time it was clearer. A voice. Not loud, not shouting. Just speaking. Right behind me. I froze instantly, the glass still in my hand. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body told me not to. The voice said something I couldn't fully make out, just a few syllables, soft and low. But I knew one thing for sure. It wasn't coming from the TV. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside my apartment, from somewhere behind me. I spun around quickly. Nothing. The room was empty. Completely empty. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. I walked through the apartment, checking everything again. Closets, bathroom, under the bed, even inside cabinets, which didn't make any sense. Nothing. No one. No explanation. That night, I barely slept. Every small noise made me flinch. Every shift in the building made my heart race. I kept replaying the moment. In my head, the voice, how close it sounded, how real it felt. It wasn't muffled. It wasn't distant. It was right there. The next evening, I tried to act normal. I turned on the TV earlier than usual, left lights on in every room, kept background noise going so I wouldn't be alone with the silence. It worked for a while. Until around 1 a.m., the TV volume suddenly dropped. Not gradually. Instantly. Like someone had turned it down. I stared at the remote in my hand. I hadn't touched it. The air in the room felt colder, thicker. Then I heard it again. Clearer than ever. A whisper. Right next to my ear. "You hear me now." I jumped so hard I knocked the remote off the couch. I spun around, my heart slamming against my ribs. Nothing. No one. But the feeling didn't go away. The sense that I wasn't alone in that space. That something was right there, just out of sight. Watching. Listening. I grabbed my phone and called my friend, trying to sound calm, trying to convince myself that if I talked to someone, it would feel normal again. It didn't. While I was on the phone, I walked slowly through the apartment, narrating what I saw, trying to ground myself in reality. "Everything's fine," I said. "I don't see anything." But as I passed the hallway leading to my bathroom, I stopped. Something felt off. The door was open. I always closed it. Always. I don't know why that detail bothered me so much, but it did. I told my friend to stay on the line and walk toward it slowly. The light inside was off. The room was dark. Too dark. Like the light had been swallowed instead of just turned off. I reached for the switch and flipped it on. The bathroom looked normal. Sink, mirror, towels, nothing out of place. I let out a shaky breath. I stopped mid-sentence. In the mirror behind me for just a fraction of a second, I thought I saw movement. Not a clear shape, not a person, just something shifting in the reflection. I turned around instantly. Nothing there. My friend kept asking what was wrong, but I couldn't explain it. I didn't even know what I had seen. That was the moment I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. This wasn't just noise. It wasn't just imagination. Whatever was happening in that apartment, it was aware of me. It knew when I was alone. It knew when I was listening. And it was getting closer. That night I didn't turn the lights off at all. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand, watching the door, waiting for something to happen. Hours passed. Nothing. Around 3 a.m., I started to feel a little calmer. Maybe it was over. Maybe whatever this was had stopped. That's when I heard it. Not a whisper this time. Not distant. Not unclear. A voice, right outside my bedroom door. Clear, soft, and unmistakably human. It said my name. I didn't respond when it said my name. I couldn't. My throat locked up instantly, like my body knew that answering would make something worse happen. I sat there on my bed, staring at the closed bedroom door, barely breathing. The voice had been right outside. Not muffled, not distant. Close enough that if I had reached out, I felt like I could have touched whatever it belonged to. A few seconds passed. Then I heard it again. Softer this time. Slower. Saying my name like it was testing it. Learning it. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I grabbed my phone and called 911, my fingers shaking uncontrollably. The dispatcher answered, but I could barely speak above a whisper. "There's someone in my apartment," I said. "They're calling my name." She asked if I could see them. I told her no. She asked if I was safe. I didn't know how to answer that, because the truth was, I had no idea where it was coming from. The voice didn't sound like it was behind the door anymore. It sounded closer, like it was moving. The dispatcher told me to stay in my room to lock the door if I could. I got up slowly, never taking my eyes off the door, and turned the lock as quietly as possible. The click sounded louder than it should have. Too loud, like it echoed. And then the voice stopped. Completely. The silence that followed was worse than anything before. It felt heavy, pressed against my ears. I waited, listening for any sign of movement. Nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, just silence. The dispatcher kept talking, asking me to stay on the line, telling me officers were on the way. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. And then from inside my room, I heard it again. Right behind me, "You locked me out." I screamed and spun around so fast I nearly fell off the bed. The room was empty, completely empty. There was nowhere for anyone to be hiding, no closet big enough, no space under the bed, nothing. But the voice had been there, close enough that I felt it brush past my ear. The dispatcher heard me scream and started asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't think. My brain was trying to process something that didn't make sense. It wasn't just outside the door anymore, it was inside the room, with me. The air felt colder suddenly, like the temperature had dropped all at once. I could see my breath faintly in the dim light. My skin prickled. Every instinct told me to run, but I had nowhere to go. The door was locked. The only way out was through the same space the voice had come from. I backed slowly toward the corner of the room, clutching my phone like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. "They're almost there," the dispatcher said. "Just stay where you are." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But time felt wrong. Slower, stretched, like every second was taking longer than it should. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The mirror across from my bed. At first it looked normal, just my reflection pale and shaking. But behind me, there was something else. Not fully visible, not clear. Just a darker shape where there shouldn't have been one. Standing slightly behind me. I turned around instantly. Nothing. The room was still empty. But when I looked back at the mirror, it was still there. The shape hadn't moved. It was just standing, watching. I couldn't make out details. No face, no features, just a human-like outline that didn't belong. My chest tightened as I realized something. It wasn't behind me. It was only in the reflection. The voice came again, calm, almost amused. "You see me now." My entire body went cold. The shape in the mirror shifted slightly, like it had taken a step closer. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my phone. "Please hurry," I whispered into it. "Please." The dispatcher said officers were pulling up outside. Relief hit me so suddenly I almost cried. But before I could move, before I could do anything, the voice spoke one last time, right next to my ear. "Don't leave." The shape in the mirror moved closer again. Close enough now that it stood directly behind my reflection. Its head tilted slightly like it was studying me. Then the bedroom door rattled. Hard. The handle shook violently, like someone on the outside was trying to get in. I screamed again, stumbling toward the wall. The dispatcher shouted something about officers being there, about them entering the apartment. The door rattled harder, louder. Then suddenly silence. Complete silence. The handle stopped moving. The shape in the mirror was gone. Just gone. The room felt normal again. The air warmed. The pressure lifted. I collapsed onto the floor, shaking uncontrollably. Seconds later, the bedroom door burst open. Police. They cleared the room, checked every corner, every space. There was no one there. No signs of forced entry, no hidden access points. Nothing. They searched the entire apartment. Same result. Nothing. One of the officers looked at me carefully after I told them everything. He didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss it. He just said something quietly, almost like he didn't want anyone else to hear. "This isn't the first call we've had from this building." I moved out the next day. I didn't take most of my stuff. I didn't care. I just wanted to leave. I never went back. But sometimes when I'm alone at night, I still think about that voice. The way it sounded so close, so real. And every once in a while, when I look into a mirror for too long, I catch myself checking behind me. Not because I see something, but because I'm afraid that one day I will. I installed the camera because I thought it would make me feel safer. I had just moved into a small house in a quiet neighborhood in Oregon, and even though nothing had ever happened there, the idea of living alone started to get to me after a few weeks. The house sat slightly off the main road with a long driveway and no immediate neighbors on either side. During the day, it felt peaceful. At night, it felt isolated, too isolated. So I bought a doorbell camera, set it up facing the front porch, and told myself that if anything ever happened, I'd at least have some kind of record. For the first couple of weeks, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. I'd get notifications when packages were delivered when I came home from work, even when a stray cat wandered across the porch. Nothing unusual. Nothing concerning. That's why I almost ignored the first notification. It came in at 1:24:07 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was already in bed, scrolling through my phone half asleep. My screen lit up with the alert motion detected. Front door. I frowned slightly. No one should be at my door that late. I opened the app and waited for the video to load. At first, I didn't see anything. Just my empty porch, the faint glow of the porch light, and the darkness beyond it. I was about to close the app when something shifted on the edge of the frame. A shape, tall, standing just outside the camera's field of view. I leaned closer to my phone, trying to make sense of it. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, barely visible, like it was deliberately positioned so the camera wouldn't capture it fully. My chest tightened a little, but I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe someone walking by, maybe a neighbor cutting through the yard. I locked my phone and tried to go back to sleep. The next morning, I checked the footage again. The figure was still there in the clip, not moving, not approaching, just standing, watching. I tried to convince myself it was a glitch, some kind of shadow distortion, but something about the shape looked too defined, too human. I shrugged it off and went to work. That night, I made sure to lock all the doors and windows before going to bed. Around 1 a.m., just as I was starting to fall asleep, my phone buzzed again. Motion detected. Front door. My stomach dropped instantly. I opened the app without hesitation. This time, the figure was closer. Still not fully in frame, but enough that I could see more of it. A person. Definitely a person. Standing just to the right of my door, out of direct view. Facing the house. Facing me. My heart started to race. I watched the clip again. And again. The figure didn't move at all during the entire recording. It just stood there, completely still, like it had been there before the camera even activated. I checked the timestamp. The motion lasted almost 2 minutes. 2 full minutes of someone standing outside my house in the middle of the night. Not knocking, not leaving, just watching. I didn't sleep much that night. Every small noise made me sit up. Every creak of the house felt louder than it should have. I kept checking the app every few minutes, expecting to see another notification, another clip, another glimpse of that figure. Nothing came. The next day, I considered calling the police, but I hesitated. What would I say? That someone stood outside my house and didn't do anything. It sounded ridiculous even in my own head. So I told myself I was overreacting. I tried to move on. That didn't last long. The third night, the notification came earlier. 1:32 p.m. I hadn't even gone to bed yet. I was sitting on the couch, the TV on low, trying to distract myself from the anxiety that had been building since the first night. When my phone buzzed, I felt it immediately, that same cold drop in my stomach. I opened the app slowly, this time almost like I didn't want to confirm what I already knew. The video loaded, and this time, he was fully in frame. A man, tall, wearing dark clothes, standing directly in front of my door. His head slightly tilted like he was looking at something inside. Like he knew exactly where I was. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could see enough to know he wasn't just passing by. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He was there for a reason. And then after a few seconds, he did something that made my entire body go cold. He stepped closer to the camera, slowly, deliberately, until his face filled most of the frame. Still unclear, still shadowed, but close enough that I could feel it. The way he was looking, not at the door, not at the camera, at me. I dropped my phone onto the couch like it burned me. My breathing became uneven, shallow. I didn't know what to do. Call the police. Wait, pretend I wasn't home. I didn't even know if he was still outside. The clip ended after about 30 seconds. I picked up my phone again and refreshed the app. No new alerts, no live feed, just silence. I sat there for what felt like forever, staring at the front door, waiting for a knock, waiting for the handle to move, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Eventually, I forced myself to get up and check the door. Every step felt heavier than the last. I stopped a few feet away, listening. No sound, no movement. I reached for the lock and checked it. Still secure, the chain still in place. I looked through the peephole. The porch was empty, completely empty, no sign of him. I backed away slowly, my heart still racing. That's when my phone buzzed again. Another notification, same message. Motion detected. Front door. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before opening it, and when I did, I felt my stomach drop harder than before, because this time, the camera wasn't facing the porch anymore. It was tilted slightly upward, as if something or someone had touched it, and in the reflection of the lens, I could see the man standing directly in front of my door, much closer than before. Close enough that if he reached out, he could touch the handle. I didn't move when I saw the camera angle had changed. I couldn't. My entire body locked in place as I stared at the screen, trying to understand what I was looking at. The reflection in the lens was faint, distorted, but there was no mistaking it. He was standing right in front of my door, close enough that his body blocked most of the light, close enough that he could reach the handle if he wanted to, and the worst part was, I hadn't heard anything. No footsteps, no creak on the porch, no sound of someone approaching. It was like he had just appeared there. My phone buzzed again in my hand. Another notification, another clip. I tapped it instantly. The video loaded, and this time the image was clearer. The camera had been adjusted slightly, again angled just enough to show more of him. He was still standing there, not moving, not knocking, just staring at the door, at me. I felt my breathing become shallow, uneven. Every instinct told me not to go near the door, not to make a sound, not to let him know I was inside. But something about the way he stood there, so still, so patient, made it feel like he already knew. I switched to the live view. The stream lagged for a second before coming into focus. The porch light flickered slightly, casting uneven shadows across the frame. And there he was, exactly where the recording showed him. He didn't move when the live feed connected, didn't react, didn't even blink from what I could tell, just stood there facing the door, watching. I zoomed in slightly, trying to see his face. It was still hard to make out details, but I could see the outline of his features now. His head was tilted just slightly to one side. His mouth looked like it was moving, not speaking, just moving, like he was whispering something I couldn't hear. My stomach twisted violently. I muted the TV completely and listened. Silence, no voice, no sound, just the faint hum of the house around me, and then slowly his head straightened. He stepped forward. One small step. My heart slammed against my ribs. I watched his hand lift, slowly, deliberately. It hovered near the door handle for a second. Then he lowered it again. He wasn't trying to get in, not yet. He was waiting, testing, watching how long I would stay silent. Another notification buzzed, this time not from the front door, from the side of the house. Motion detected. Side camera. My blood ran cold. I had forgotten about that camera. I opened the feed immediately. The side yard was dark, barely visible under the weak security light, but there was movement. A second figure, standing near the corner of the house, taller, broader, completely still. My chest tightened so fast it hurt. There wasn't just one of them. I switched back to the front camera. The man was still there, still staring, still waiting. It felt like they were surrounding the house, watching every side, waiting for something, waiting for me. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I dialed 911. The dispatcher answered quickly, and this time I didn't hesitate. "There are people outside my house," I whispered. "More than one. They're just standing there." She told me to stay inside, to lock everything, to stay on the line. Officers were already being dispatched. I kept switching between the camera feeds, my eyes darting back and forth. The man at the front door didn't move. The second figure at the side didn't move. It was like they were frozen in place, like they didn't need to rush. Minutes passed, too slowly, too quietly, and then something changed. The man at the front door stepped closer again. This time his hand didn't hover. It went straight to the handle. He gripped it, tight. I watched as he tested it. Once, twice. The handle didn't budge. It was locked, but he didn't stop. He leaned in closer to the door, his face nearly touching the wood. And then through the thin barrier between us, I heard it. Not from the phone, not from the camera, from the door itself. A voice, low, calm, right on the other side. "I know you're inside." My entire body went numb. The dispatcher kept talking, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe properly. He knew. He had known the whole time. The second figure moved then. For the first time. On the side camera, I saw it shift, stepping closer to the house. Closer to the windows. They weren't just watching anymore. They were closing in. The man at the door pulled the handle harder this time. The lock held, but the force was enough to make the door rattle. Once, twice, louder each time. I backed away from the living room, retreating toward the hallway, my phone pressed tightly against my ear. "They're trying to get in," I whispered. The dispatcher said officers were less than a minute away. Less than a minute. It felt like forever. The handle rattled again, harder, more aggressive. The man stepped back suddenly as if he heard something. And then, just like that, he turned, walked off the porch, disappeared from the camera frame. The second figure vanished from the side camera at the same time. Gone, like they had never been there. Seconds later, red and blue lights flooded the windows. Police. The officers searched the property immediately. The yard, the street, the surrounding area. Nothing. No one. No footprints. No signs of anyone running or hiding. Nothing that proved what I had just seen was real. But it was real. I knew it was. Because the footage was still there. The recordings. The images. The moment he looked directly into the camera. Directly at me. The police took copies of everything. They told me to stay somewhere else for the night. I didn't argue. I left within 10 minutes, barely taking anything with me. I never went back to that house. But a few days later, I checked the app one last time, just to see if anything else had happened. There were new notifications, multiple ones, all from the same night. Timestamps between 3:10 and 4:00 a.m. I opened one. The camera showed my empty porch. No movement, no figures, nothing. Just the door. And then slowly, the handle moved, turning, from the outside. I never liked the basement in that house, even before anything started happening. It wasn't something I could explain logically. It just felt off. The house itself was small, a single-story place in a quiet part of Pennsylvania, but the basement was different. Older, colder, like it didn't belong to the rest of the house. The door to it was in the hallway near my bedroom, and I kept it closed at all times. Not locked, just closed. I told myself it was because I didn't use it, that it was just storage. But the truth was, I didn't like being near it, especially at night. I was 27, living alone, working from home most days. My routine was simple. Wake up, work, eat, watch something, go to bed. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would make me feel unsafe. That changed one night in October, about a week before Halloween. I was in bed, scrolling on my phone when the power flickered for a second. Just a quick blackout, the kind that makes you blink and check if it actually happened. When the lights came back on, everything seemed normal, except for one thing, the light under the basement door. It was on. I stared at it for a few seconds, trying to remember if I had turned it on earlier. I hadn't been down there all day, I was sure of it. I slowly got out of bed and walked into the hallway. The glow from beneath the door was steady, bright, too bright for a single bulb. My hand hovered near the doorknob, but I hesitated. The air felt colder there, not dramatically, just enough to make my skin prickle. I told myself it was nothing, just a light, just a switch, I forgot. I opened the door. The stairs leading down were dimly lit by the single bulb hanging from the ceiling. It swung slightly back and forth, as if something had just brushed past it. I froze at the top of the stairs. The basement itself looked the same as always. Concrete floor, old shelves, boxes I hadn't touched since moving in. Nothing out of place, nothing obviously wrong. I forced myself to walk down a few steps and reached for the switch. I flipped it off. The light went out instantly. I went back upstairs, closed the door, and went back to bed, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But I didn't sleep well that night. The next night, it happened again. This time, I didn't notice the power flicker. I just woke up, suddenly my heart already racing for no reason I could explain. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 3:18 a.m. The house was silent, completely silent, and then I saw it. The light under the basement door, on again. My stomach tightened immediately. I didn't move this time. I just stared at it from my bed, trying to listen. At first there was nothing. Then faintly, I heard something. A soft sound. Quick. Light, like footsteps, not heavy like an adult. Lighter, faster, like a child running across the floor. My entire body went rigid. The sound came and went quickly, like it was moving in short bursts. Running, stopping, running again. I held my breath, trying to convince myself it was something else. Pipes, animals, anything. But deep down I knew what it sounded like, and I knew it didn't belong in my basement. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app, turning on the flashlight. I got out of bed slowly and walked toward the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. The closer I got to the basement door, the clearer the sound became. 2 sets of footsteps now, moving, circling, then stopping abruptly. I stopped a few feet away from the door. My hand trembled as I reached for the knob. The moment my fingers touched it, the sound stopped. Completely. The silence that followed felt wrong. Too sudden, too complete. Like whatever was down there knew I was listening. I stood there for a long time, not moving, not breathing properly, waiting for the sound to start again. It didn't. Eventually I turned the knob slowly and opened the door just enough to look down the stairs. The light was still on, the bulb still swaying slightly. But the basement itself looked empty. No movement, no shadows, no sign of anything being down there. I didn't go down this time. I couldn't. I closed the door quickly and backed away, my heart pounding. The next morning I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was animals, maybe the bulb was faulty, maybe the house was older than I thought and had issues I didn't understand. I even called the landlord to ask about the wiring. He told me the basement hadn't been used in years and that the electrical system was fine as far as he knew. His tone changed slightly when I mentioned the sounds, but he brushed it off quickly. That night I decided to do something different. I set up a small security camera in the hallway, pointing directly at the basement door. I wanted proof. Something real. Something I could explain. I went to bed earlier than usual, but I didn't sleep deeply. I kept waking up, checking my phone, waiting. And then at exactly 3:18 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Hallway. My chest tightened instantly. I opened the app and waited for the footage to load. The video showed the hallway. Empty. Quiet. Still. For a few seconds, nothing happened. And then, the basement door handle moved. Slowly, deliberately, the door opened on its own, just a few inches. And from inside the basement, I heard it clearly this time. A child's voice. Soft. Close. Whispering up the stairs. Come down. I didn't go down. I couldn't. The moment I heard that voice, soft, calm, and unmistakably a child, something in my body shut down completely. Every instinct I had screamed the same thing: do not open that door. I stayed in my bed frozen, staring at my phone screen, replaying the footage over and over, like I might somehow find a different explanation if I watched it enough times. The hallway was empty. The door opened on its own, and the voice came from below. There was no one else in the house. There couldn't have been. I had checked everything, every lock, every window. I knew I was alone. At least I thought I was. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I left every light on, sat with my back against the wall, and waited for the sun to come up. The basement door stayed closed after that. It didn't move again. No more sounds. No more voices. Just silence. Too much silence. The next morning, I tried to act like everything was normal. I made coffee. I checked emails. I even tried to laugh at myself a little, telling myself it was stress or maybe some kind of sleep hallucination. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The house felt different. Like it was watching me. That afternoon, I reviewed the footage again, frame by frame this time. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Just before the door opened, there was movement under it. A shadow. Small. Quick. Like something had moved right up to the base of the door before touching the handle. My stomach dropped instantly. I zoomed in as much as I could, but the camera quality wasn't good enough to show details. Just that something had been there. Something small. And it had opened the door from the inside. I called the landlord again. This time, I told him everything. The light, the footsteps, the voice, the footage. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "Don't go down there," he said quietly. "I'll come by tomorrow. Tomorrow again. Not now. Not today." The same delay. The same hesitation. Like he already knew something he wasn't telling me. That night was worse than the others. I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, staring at the hallway, waiting, watching. My phone in my hand the entire time. Around midnight, everything was still. Quiet. Too quiet. Around 1 a.m., I started to think maybe it wouldn't happen again. Maybe whatever it was had stopped. Then, at exactly 3:18 a.m., the lights flickered. Not just once, 3 times. Quick. Sharp flashes that made the entire house feel unstable. And then the basement light turned on again, brighter than before, stronger. The glow under the door stretched further across the hallway, reaching almost to the edge of the living room. My phone buzzed at the same time. Another notification. Motion detected. Hallway. I didn't want to open it. Every part of me told me not to, but I did anyway. The video loaded slowly. The hallway appeared on screen. Empty. Still. And then the basement door opened. Wider this time. not just a crack, enough to show the top of the stairs. The light from below was stronger than it should have been, casting shadows that didn't match the angle of the bulb. Shadows that moved slightly, even when nothing else did. I felt my chest tighten as I listened. At first there was nothing. Then, footsteps, more than before. Not just one or two, multiple, running, stopping, shifting, like something was gathering at the bottom of the stairs. And then the voice came again, the same child's voice. Clearer this time. "Come down." Another voice followed, slightly higher, almost giggling. "We're waiting." My hands started shaking uncontrollably. I dropped the phone onto the couch, unable to keep watching. But the sound didn't stay inside the phone this time. I heard it from the hallway, faint but real, coming from the basement itself. The voices were no longer just recordings. They were there, in the house. I stood up slowly, my legs weak, my body refusing to cooperate. I didn't want to move closer, but I couldn't just sit there either. I stepped toward the hallway, each step feeling like I was walking into something I didn't understand. The basement door was still open, the light spilling out, the air colder now, much colder. I stopped a few feet away. I could feel it. Something was down there. Not just one thing, more than one. The voices whispered again. Softer now. Closer. Please. I shook my head, backing away. "No," I whispered. "I'm not going down there." The moment I said that, everything stopped. The footsteps, the voices, the movement, all of it gone. The light flickered once more, then shut off completely. The basement door slammed shut, hard, loud enough to make me jump back. The house went completely dark, silent. Still, I didn't stay another night. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and left. I didn't even pack anything. I just got in my car and drove. I stayed in a motel until the landlord finally came to inspect the house. When I met him later that week, he looked different, tired, nervous. He didn't ask many questions. He just handed me my deposit back and said I didn't need to come back. I didn't argue, but before I left, I asked him one thing. What happened in that basement? He hesitated. Then he said something I still think about sometimes. They sealed part of it years ago, he said quietly. After what happened, I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head. It's better if you don't know. I never went back. I never got my things, but every once in a while, usually late at night, I still get a notification on my phone from that old camera. Even though I disconnected it, even though I don't live there anymore, the message is always the same. Motion detected, hallway. And the timestamp is always the same too, 3:18 a.m.